This is a book review of the Many-Headed Hydra. It was published in 2000. It was the full title is The Many-Headed Hydra: Sailors, Slaves, Commoners, and the Hidden History of the Revolutionary Atlantic. This is by Peter Linebaugh and Marcus Rediker. The Many-Headed Hydra is a Greek tale. It was a many-headed serpent with poisonous razor-sharp teeth that if a head was severed, two would grow back in its place. So it was difficult to kill. It was made to guard the underworld, and it lived in a cave, and it would come out and feed on people. The person who slayed this Hydra was Hercules, and Hercules slayed this beast because he was a great believer of freedom and a protector of humanity. So he was basically the premise of Superman. The way that he the reason why this beast was so hard to slay was because it could come from so many directions at one time because it had multiple heads. And the closer you got to defeating it, the more numbers it created in its attack because the heads would grow back twofold. So it seemed like an almost impossibility to defeat this thing. And he figured a way to distract the Hydra, where the Hydra took its eyes off of him, and he could defeat it one head at a time, cauterizing the wound as to where the head wouldn't grow back when he cut it off. And this was something commonly referenced by the heads of capitalism when they referred to the proletarians and the slaves and anyone who functioned in their eyes against capitalism. Well, the issue with capitalism is that it just was not fair. The Marxist term proletariat is showing that people are reduced in their ownership to their own ability, to their own labor. That's all that they own. And they have to sell that labor to take care of themselves, while there are people that own everything else in privatization. And because it's privatized, they have to deprive someone of it for it to have value. So I have to sell my labor to be able to take care of myself. Now, the heads of capitalism saw themselves as Hercules, and the Hydra being the common people that were reduced to labor, that began to revolt against the things that the capitalists were doing, that were restricting their wealth, restricting their ability to take care of themselves, and abusing their access. So the Hydra in this book is actually the good guy. But I had noticed that the Hydra could have been looked at as the many revolutions popping up around the coastal Atlantic, or it could be the capitalists coming one behind the other. Every time a revolution would have a degree of success, here comes another capitalist, another system, another abuse to deprive people of wealth. But particularly in this book, the underclass between 1676 and 1780 and 1803 were defeated the same way the Hydra was. The Hydra being able to attack in so many different ways, from so many different directions, with the razor sharp teeth on each head and the poison, And if you do harm it, it multiplies. It's almost an incredible feat. And the way that the Hydra was defeated is the same way the rebellions of the underclass was defeated. The underclass was distracted from its target, as Hercules was the target, and he had his nephew distract one of the heads of the Hydra. He would cut off the head, and the nephew would cauterize where the head was severed, where the other two heads wouldn't grow back. The heads of capitalism figured out, after Bacon's Rebellion, Culpeper's Rebellion, the fires in New York, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Haitian Revolution, was many, many revolutions, that the biggest problem with the Hydra was that it was too big. And they had and they were all focused on one thing, because you would have people who led a Haitian revolution or had led a slave revolution in Haiti get on a maritime ship and come up to North America because they were sailors, or they were working on the ship, or they worked from dock to dock and they were looking for work. And when they would move up, they would tell people about, well, you know, this is what we're doing to, you know, what has happened down in Haiti to fight against these injustices. And then the people would be motivated to do it there. Well, guess what? They would travel, because they're sailors, pirates, maritime people. They travel across the Atlantic again, maybe to Africa or over to Europe. And these communications are going amongst the common people. So it's not just in the United States and in the Caribbean. It's all over the coastal Atlantic that these revolutions are popping up, like the Hydra. Well, what they did was they divided the underclass, which still goes on today. They gave a degree of wealth to the white members of the underclass. See, the Hydra's head in this particular thing, if the Hydra is the underclass, was the proletarians, the people who just had their labor. That's the only thing that they owned, and they had to sell their labor to take care of themselves. Then you had the slaves, who were even deprived of their labor to sell. Then you had the Native Americans, and then you had the pirates. So you had, you know, different groups of people who were oppressed under the capitalistic system were all working together. Well, once they made that division and gave poor whites land, guns, and access to the bulk of the wealth allocated for the underclass began to fight within itself. The whites that were given power over the underclass would fight to maintain their power. This is all the way evident through the 60s, when they were spraying water on people and sicking dogs on them and beating them with billy clubs, knowing the cameras were there to see them doing it. They were fighting for their right to have that place that they were given. While that is going on in the underclass, the heads of capitalism can roll forward, because the Hydra is now fighting itself. Okay. What was showing in this particular reading was how Europe, Africa, the Caribbean, and North America, through this period from 1676, give or take, and 1803, give or take, was this worldwide communication of rebellion back and forth the Atlantic. Now you gotta think, this is the day of no cell phones, nothing like that. No, carrier pigeons, I mean, this is a far-reaching communication for that time. And in the many-headed Hydra holds a great lesson of what we see today when we see poor groups voting for representatives that do not hold their interest. But that's why they're voting for the power structure to maintain their place in the underclass, because they always have that fear of joining the underclass again. Now, if we don't know that history, we will not recognize it in its manifestations today.